When you set up the VPI Traveler tone arm and you're adjusting the tracking force, do not turn this counterweight. It is fixed. If you try torquing this, you could destroy the bearings of this tone arm. The only way to move this counterweight is to turn this knurled knob. Okay? It's very, very important. Now, make sure this gauge is snug up against the back of the armrest. Then you're going to move the cartridge so that the stylus tip is sitting right in that circle. Right there. And looking at it from the side, and get yourself one of these little inexpensive 3x jeweler's loops, and make sure that the stylus is both in that circle and riding along this line. That's the idea, is to describe this arc straight across. And then looking from the front, you want to make sure that the cantilever is parallel to the lines, to all of these lines. And when the stylus is sitting in that circle and looking at it from the side, it's in line with the arc, and the cantilever is parallel to these other lines. And if it's not, twist it around in the head shell very carefully, but don't make sure you don't lose the fact that it's in the middle of that circle. When that's done, you want to tighten these screws ever so slightly, a little bit at a time, until they're tight. How tight? Not so tight that you deform the head shell. Just snug so it doesn't move. And that's another reason why you don't want to use a 90-degree Allen key, because you'll have way too much torque. Try to get one of these things and do it very gently, okay? And then your overhang is correct. Now, what does the overhang mean? We're not going to talk about that for this particular setup. That's for another more theoretical discussion. Now you've got the overhang correct, and you've got the zenith angle correct. That puts the stylus in the right place, and the job is basically done. Okay, now we're going to check the stylus pressure, which is supposed to be 1.75. So that's about halfway between 0.75 and 1 doubled. This is really approximate. In the end, you want to listen by ear. Try to keep it close to what you measure. Okay, that's about 1.75. Alright? And now, we're almost done. So the next thing you want to do is check the torque on this. Now this arm does not have any anti-skating facilities. So I don't want to talk about what skating is, but anti-skating is going to want the arm to move in this direction. It would appear to be there's enough friction caused by this loop to probably create some anti-skating force, and we're going to leave it. The other thing you could do is twist this around, which will create more, but I suggest not doing that. I suggest, for the purposes of this turntable, make sure that this loop is dressed properly so there is very little friction. Alright, now the only other thing you're going to want to do is set the vertical tracking angle and stylus rake angle. Now, in order to do that correctly, you need a digital microscope, but a digital microscope costs hundreds of dollars. So I suggest you start with the arm parallel to the record surface. Put a record on the platter, and I'm just going to grab one over here and put it on the platter. It's a test pressing. I'll be careful with it. Just put it on there, and then look from the side. I can see that the arm is slightly above, so I'm going to move it. I'm going to loosen this, and by turning this ring, I am changing the height. You see that? It's very ingenious and simple. And you might want to use the cueing lever. And you see the cueing lever is not working right now. I've got to raise the cueing lever. So how do I do that? I'm going to use the same, they made it the same size Allen screw, which is convenient. And I'm going to raise it up. You see, right now the whole arm is loose, but don't worry about that. Okay. Make sure you don't lift it up too high. If you lift it up too high, then the arm is not going to clear the cueing lever, and that's probably a little bit higher than we want it. So I'm going to adjust it again, make it a little lower. Take your time. Let's see how that is. Not enough. Let's see how that is. That looks good. And that is good. It clears. Okay, see that? Now, it looks like the arm is parallel. Stylus rake angle is another subject to be discussed in another format, but I'm going to use this loop just to get a look at how the stylus looks. You can't really do it accurately this way, but you can see whether it's grossly off. You're looking for 92 degrees. That is, you want the stylus to be 2 degrees beyond perpendicular to the record surface. You want it like that. If you look in the through this loop, just try to get it looking like it's at least perpendicular to the record surface. The more severe your stylus profile, the more critical this is, but on the less expensive cartridges, it's not that critical. Okay, that's our starting point. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to tighten this grub screw right here, this nylon grub screw, and you want it very snug. You don't want any of this to be moving around. And now it seems to be tight. See that? It's tight. And then I'd lower this adjustment ring down to the surface so that the whole thing looks tight. Then I'm going to make sure that these two screws are tight. There we go. And that one's tight. And now we're basically done. The only thing we have to do is connect up our phono leads. This turntable does not come with phono leads, so you'll have to get some. And again, get some decent ones. Don't get cheap. Don't use cheapies from your old VCR. Get some decent ones that are low capacitance and low resistance, that are meant for phono. And they'll plug in here. And if there's a ground wire attached to it, attach it to there. And guess what? You're now ready to play records.